Welcome to part one of Story Expo's Masters of Story Roundtable discussion.
Welcome to Story Expo's Masters of Story. I'm Dara Christopher. I am here with, if you can use a baseball analogy, the murderer's row of top story people in the world. Let me just do a quick introduction. We've got Chris Vogler, Dara Marks, Corey Mandell, David S. Freeman, and John Truby. Welcome, everybody. It's the first time you guys have all been in a room like this. So let's just go right into it. For each of you, and you guys can answer however you want, whenever you want, what is the most important part of storytelling? We'll go ladies first.
Okay. Well, I really feel that the whole nature of storytelling is very underappreciated. That if you really think about what story is, what narrative is, it's a ubiquitous aspect of our entire lives. We often relegate storytelling to an organized story, but "Hi, honey, how was your day?" is narrative. We live in narrative. And, anything that occurs in real time is fleeting. And everything past that moment is memory. And what is memory but narrative? So this is how we know the world and we know life. And I think, therefore, the value of storytelling is something far, far greater than just something that's entertaining.
Yeah.
I think it has a function that really tells us how to live.
I would say the most important thing is the audience. Everything you do, it should be conscious of the effect it's going to have on the audience. And I mean specifically the organs of their bodies, that, what you put on the screen, the words and the actions of the characters should reach out and impact the organs of the body. And I think every audience takes whatever they're seeing unconsciously as a metaphor for their own situation. They're always comparing their situation to that of the characters, and sometimes seeing, oh, they're doing better than I am, and maybe I can steal something from their techniques, or they're doing worse, and boy, I'm going to avoid that because that's been shown to be a bad thing.
But when you're writing a story, then, are you writing something for yourself, or are you writing with an audience in mind?
I think always with an audience in mind, although I think anybody who tries to write, to communicate, is a member of the audience. And that's always been my orientation, advising people, consulting, working on other people's scripts, I'm confident because I'm a member of the audience too. And so if I don't like something, or I don't understand something, I don't feel anything, I think that's a legitimate response, because I'm in the audience too.
To piggyback on that, to your question, I get a lot of writers sent to me, and from my perspective, a lot of writers will fall into two categories. So there's the writers that will write from the inside. They'll write what matters to them. They'll write what's authentic to them, what really is meaningful to them. And often they'll write a lot of scripts that really matter to them, but not a lot of other people. Then there's people that come more outside in. So they're trying to figure out, well, what does the audience want? What is unique and interesting to an audience? And the marketplace has really moved away from them. And these writers, they had a chance of a career, but now it's really hard. What I see the most successful writers do is they start with, what do I want to say? And what is the most meaningful thing to me? And then know how to say that in a way that is compelling to other people. So it's the integration of the two. And I think if you understand where the industry is going, that integration is going to be the key to success.
But what about people who are chasing what they think that the audience wants to see?
Well, first off, that's fool's gold, because nobody knows what everyone else's subjective opinion is. But also, here's the thing. The industry changed. I mean, we're in industry 2.0. Everything changed 10 years ago. And so now it has to be authentic. And there's so much content. There's way more content than anyone could watch.
Yeah.
So what is working is content that people have an emotional connection to, that matters to them. It's not just enough like, oh, it makes me laugh or it makes me think. That it has to matter. Well, here's the thing. It's not going to matter to the audience if it doesn't matter to the writer. Like that's the first thing when I work with a writer is we'll start with what matters to you more than anything. And from there, we'll work to a concept that will be exciting to other people. So I think you start with what, just again, if it doesn't matter incredibly to you, it's not going to matter to other people.
What was it that changed 10 years ago?
Oh, what changed 10 years, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation, too many smart people here, but what I would say what changed is, as everyone here knows, the model, the TV industry was, we create product to sell commercials. And what we want is ratings. We want the most number of people watching so we can charge the most to advertisers. So for 50 years, the model was, let's create comfort food. Let's create content that's really easy to watch because we want as many people watching. We don't want anyone offended. I mean, you know, Breaking Bad couldn't have been made. Atlanta couldn't be made. All right. So we don't want to offend anyone. We want everyone to like it. But more importantly, we want it to be really easy. So you don't have to be paying attention because what they realized early on is that the main function of TV for most people isn't to entertain. It was to create company, to have a sense of company in the room, to not be alone. So people would have the TV on while they made dinner, ate dinner, did their homework, you know, worked. And so the point was you didn't have to pay that much attention to TV because they were all following the same tropes, the same formulas, the same paradigm. So you see one cop show or one comedy show, you've seen them all. So you could tune in and out. You could miss 7 episodes because A, you know, it's episodic, and B, it's the same story structure.
Yeah.
And so they liked it if you weren't paying attention because that meant you kept the TV on for hours, you counted as rate. So what changed is now, even though free TV is free, 81% of all content that's being consumed comes from the paid platforms and the premium cable. And that's a completely different business model, right? I work with showrunners all the time. The world changed 8 years ago. It used to be the total number of viewers, not anymore. Now it's follow through. Now it's how many people watch the first episode, watch all the episodes. Like Girls had an audience of 900,000. That's a complete failure 10 years ago. That is a huge asset for HBO because 900,000 people, they watched every single episode. And now they're paying a monthly subscription fee. So take that monthly subscription fee and multiply it by 900,000. That's some serious money. So now that's why to succeed in the marketplace, you can't be writing to the old paradigms, the formulas, the rules. Everything has changed. You have to be able to create something that no one else could create. You have to create characters and a story that only you can create because it's all about follow through now. And so that's what dramatically changed the industry.
Well, what you're talking about is TV.
Yes.
I think it's important to look at a much bigger perspective and look at all popular storytelling in every medium, because that has changed radically in the last 20 years in every medium. And what are the 3 main things? One is high concept, importance, increased importance of story world, and above all, by far, more dense plot. The one thing that, in working with writers over the last 20 years that I have found that shocked me was that to be successful in any medium in terms of popular storytelling, you have to be in the top 1% of writers. They get all the work in every medium. And what separates the top 1% of writers from everybody else, and this shocked me, was the ability to create complex plot. Why? Because popular storytelling in every medium is based on genre storytelling. It's not literary fiction. It's not classical family drama as it, say, used to be in television 40 years ago. It's all genre storytelling, and now it's not just one genre like Jaws, you know, horror story. It's combining genres. Why? Because the studios say, we want to give them 2 for the price of 1. And what are genres? Genres are plot systems, right? With 15 to 20 unique story beats make that genre. So what happens when you combine genres? You go from 15 to 20 story beats, plot beats, to 30 to 40 plot beats. fantastic, because we have the same 2 hours. Unless you're James Cameron, you only get 2 hours in a movie. So what has happened is you get this incredible importance of plot. And the problem for writers is, and one reason why I am so excited about doing this class that we're going to do, is that plot is the hardest thing to teach, and it is by far the hardest thing to learn. And what I have found in really emphasizing plot for the last 10 years with writers, what I have found is the biggest reason that they do not know how to construct a complex or even a decent plot, they don't even know what plot is. The standard understanding of how plot works is completely wrong. And that is the biggest obstacle I find that writers have in order to be successful, because they can't do a 2-hour plot, or in the case of television, where plot is even more important, because as you just said, it's no longer about the episode, it's about the season. Mm-hmm. Right?
But if I can just real quick on I would just respectfully disagree on features, because everything changed in TV because the model changed. Okay, in features, the model didn't change. So I agree with you that they're still want to be making films the way they used to make it, because they see it as riskless or low risk. It isn't, but they see it that way. But it's not working. It's not working. It's completely failing. No, let me just finish. So I know the people at Marvel, I know the people at the studios, they are moving to a model of away from predictable plot-driven stories, because the audience is so bored of that. Because the audience, that's why no one's going to theaters. You get better storytelling on TV, and the studios are realizing that they got to turn their ship around, and they got to stop making films the way they used to make, because nobody cares anymore. So I agree with you right now, but I think if you look at where the industry's going, I think that model is going to be completely outdated.
See, I'm not talking about predictable plot. What I said is the importance in plot is not repeating the same plot model.
Right.
One of the things I talk about in genre storytelling is there are 3 rules of Hollywood that determine everything. One is it's a genre world, and if you don't know how to write your genre stories, you are not in the business. You don't have any chance.
And what genre is Poor Things?
Pardon?
What genre is Poor Things?
That's an art film.
Okay.
So
it's going to make
that's a genre?
going to make 0. Yeah, and it's basically a Frankenstein story. But my point is, we're talking about popular storytelling, which is what Hollywood is all about, right? So 1 is it's a genre world. 2 is you have to combine 2 to 4 genres. And 3, you have to transcend the genre, meaning you can't write the predictable plot that genre, that everybody else in that genre is writing. If you're writing a detective story that just hits the beats, you are not going to go anywhere, because 10,000 other people who are writing detective stories are hitting that too. You have to do that genre in a way we have never seen before. That's how you take genre storytelling and add the individuality that can stand out.
If I can jump in here.
Go ahead.
If that's all right. So it's really rewarding for me to hear all of your perspectives, because there's a lot of experience in this room, and it's evident when everyone speaks. I disagree with you on a few things, and I'll tell you why. I do not see any increase in story density at all. I mean, you just take a look at Ahsoka and try to explain to me how many PhD theses are going to be written about that show, trying to dissect its various elements. Not many. It's a really simple show. Pretty much, you set up a Star Wars universe and then you kind of watch the paint dry. And that's about it. And not to say that there haven't been some great wonderful pieces in that universe. I'm not sure that one's ever going to rise to the top. And I've been rewatching Battlestar Galactica, the Ronald Moore version. It's so dense. Take a look. One of my favorite TV shows that ran for 6 seasons was called Parenthood. Jason Katims was the showrunner. So dense. And I just see these things kind of go in cycles, and one showrunner does one thing, and I don't really see any changes. And when you're talking about plot, I think you're talking about imagination, and that's always been the problem. There's nothing wrong with formulas unless someone can tell you're writing a formula. If anyone ever sees your formula poking through, then they are detached from your movie. They're not emotionally involved, or your TV series. And they go, oh, okay, this is just being spoon-fed to me out of a recipe book. And the difficulty was never plot, it's always been imagination. How original are your characters? How original is your dialogue? How original are the emotional moments? How unexpected are the twists? How fresh is your material? How new are your insights? Or how newly expressed are they? And am I surprised every 20 seconds or so by something going on screen? Just rewatch Jerry Maguire. Every 20 seconds, Cameron Crowe, the writer, is doing something that just surprises the hell out of you. It's very rewarding as an audience, and you know you're in the capable hands of a showrunner. But that didn't address your question. That's just my response.
Go ahead.
And you can contradict me and probably prove me wrong in a million different ways. But I want to share what I shared with you. Is that right? Because I have never thought about what a story is. I don't really know what a story is. I have some shoes that I bought from Nike that were designed. They had a contest where people had to design shoes. And I was going to bring them with you, and I just couldn't go to storage to get them out, that represented their city. But the shoe the one for New York has all these different colors of brown and white, the skin colors of the people, and the shoelaces are blue and green, and they're the water around New York City, and there's some gray pebbly stuff, and that's like the cement. And the woman who won, this was her version of New York City. It's a beautiful shoe, and people who wear it are wearing her story. You know, I used to work in video games for a while. I took a diversion in 2003 for about 8 years and wrote a book. I have a copy here. Maybe I'll flash the screen. It doesn't really matter. But it was called Creating Emotion in Games with 300 Ways to Make Video Games Emotionally Engaging. And that was before people were even talking about emotion in interactive entertainment. And I was really interested in the story that the player had. Like, I stopped being interested in the story that we were telling and much more interested in the story that the user would have. So that's another form. The world of story, I go from watching very art house stuff to watching somebody befriending a baby owl and saving it on YouTube, and then the owl becomes their best friend. That's all story to me. But anyway, I don't know what a story is because it encompasses all of that. It's something meaningful to me that happened to someone else, and I hear it or I experience it, and it touches me inside, and it might be their experience of New York, or it might be them saving a baby owl, or it might be Poor Things, or whatever it is. But this is what I had prepared, and I hope it's okay. This is my idea of what story is. So to me, story is an intersection of one abomination and 5 miracles. The abomination is that if we count Neanderthals, we've been traipsing around the planet for 430,000 years, and yet most people are beset by emotional problems, stresses, difficulties, traumas, anxieties, and that they don't have, that in 430,000 years, man has not evolved a readily accessible way to erase the effects of these things and begin each day anew and fresh and wonderful. And that we carry these burdens with us as we get older. That to me is abomination. There should be a way, by now, that people can get a fresh start every day. Do I think such a thing is possible? Maybe, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But this abomination, the complete inability for people to master their own subconscious or unconscious, is the fodder for writers. And pretty much every TV show I've ever loved, and pretty much every movie I've ever loved, was some writer mining, we call it a character arc, mining the emotional difficulties that beset one or more characters.
Like, give me an example.
Well, I mean, I talked about parenthood.
Yeah.
This person has an autistic kid, and they had an idea of what parenthood should be and what it is like to be a father. And now his dreams of having a father-son relationship have been thrown out the window. And without these dreams, he doesn't know who he is. And he's got to figure it out. A teenage girl has one dream and one dream only, to get into Berkeley. And when she doesn't get into Berkeley, she starts drinking too much and gets in a big car accident. And this is drama. This is what we watch. And in the hands of Jason Katims, I'm more than happy to sit back and go along for the ride.
And then what are the miracles that follow?
So the miracles are, if you go, there's a museum, for those of you who are not in Los Angeles, up the coast, called the Getty Museum, where you can see statuary from the Greeks and the Romans. It's a miracle that people can put life into objects. If you go to a Taylor Swift concert, what are you experiencing? You're experiencing vibrations in the air. It's a material thing. And yet somehow the human spirit can get stuck into the material stuff. These statues still have the spirit of the creators in them.
This very much goes to what you discussed. Yeah.
I don't know how it's possible, and there's no lingo that we've ever developed, no nomenclature of the spirit that describes this. Number two, those statues or these films you watch from the 1940s are still radiating their beauty decades later, or hundreds of years later, or thousands of years later. The ability to emanate a wavelength, a beauty wavelength or an emotional wavelength. You go to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and people are chatting, and they walk into the museum, and then silence. They're being hit by so much information, so many viewpoints at the same time. The fact that anything beautiful never runs out of its ability to emanate is the second miracle. The third thing is that all of us are in the process of helping people write better. I think it's safe to, that you can take logical techniques. Here is 30 ways to make your dialogue sound natural. That's kind of a thing I teach. Or here are 65 ways to create suspense in a scene, something I teach. And people can take these very logical things and put them together to something that transcends logic. They can create something beautiful that logic cannot assail, that logic can't describe, and that logic can lead to something beyond logic is the next miracle. And then the next thing is that if you watch a movie, well, a movie might work for me, and yet it might do nothing for you. So then I have to put my life force into a film or TV show. And how that happens, I don't know, but it happens. So I have to imbue it with life, just like children imbue their stuffed toys with life. That's the next miracle. And the last thing is that aesthetics lift us up. You watch people dancing at a Bruce Springsteen concert or a Taylor Swift concert. They're not thinking about their personal problems. And somehow this aesthetic wavelength can lift people up. How does that happen? I don't know. One abomination, 5 miracles. And we, in this room, are so fortunate that we've been able, either through our own writing or the writers that we've worked with, to help these miracles come to life over and over again, and the world gets enriched. I think all of us would probably say that one of our proudest achievements are the people we helped who've gone on to create beauty far beyond the capacity for one individual to create. What a joy.
But it's very much what you talk about. It's got to make something in the body reverberate. It's got to make something shake. It's got to make something move.
Yeah, and I think that is something that can be cultivated in the artist. That by having the intention to do that, by being aware of those potential miracles. I mean, I didn't really understand this until I spent some time in the editing room, and I saw how intently the editor and the director were staring at that screen and trying to project something, what you're talking about. They're packing it. They're charging that frame. And the cinematographer does that, and the actors do that, and the writer does that on the page, tries to do that. So
yeah, I mean, we all have our own approach here to helping those miracles take place. You know, my approach, I'm a technique guy. I don't have any theories about anything. But if you want to know 89 ways to make us care about a character or identify with them, I know that. But one person's going to take those techniques, and they're going to write something like Finding Nemo, and someone else is going to write Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and somebody else is going to do Fleabag. And who knows? You know, the floodgates of the imagination are wide open, and I always am amazed to see. But the techniques are still there. If you want to care about a character, here's some ways to do it.
I think David made a great point, which is, you know, I love talking story theory. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think a lot of people started because somehow they had to read Aristotle's Poetics. And besides, you know, trying to get through the incomprehensibility of it, you know, this is classic philosophy, it's classic theory. And my complaint was always, as a pragmatist, was always, how does that tell you how to write a great play, which is what his method was. He started with the great plays and tried to create a theory out of it. But I didn't see it going the other way. And so one of the things I think I would love to hear everybody's thought on, which is, I think, so important for what we're doing here, is that if it is true that you have to be in the top 1% to be a working professional writer in any medium, the question is, how do you get there? And this is especially negative time right now because we're in this entertainment business recession. And I think that the natural response of writers is to say, I give up. I can't do this.
I'm not sure that it has to be the top 1%. I was saying earlier, I don't remember to which one of you, that you know, I've been with the same woman for a long time, many decades, and we would try to find a romantic comedy streaming. And all these romantic comedies on Amazon and Netflix, and then we go to Rotten Tomatoes. Crap, 62%, 71%. Looking for science fiction or fantasy shows, 81%, 52%. There's just an incredible tsunami of horrible stuff being made, where the writers are not in the 1%, at least according to Rotten Tomatoes, and I found it to be fairly reflective.
But are you talking about 1% to be good?
No, 1% to be commercial.
No,
I'm talking about.
You're talking about compared to other shows that have been made. I'm not talking about that.
I don't think that streamers are hiring the top 1%.
Yes, they are.
Sometimes they do.
They are. They are talking and in fiction, for example, the numbers on Amazon. The top 1% of writers sell 99% of the books. That is the hard, fast number. In terms of, when I'm talking about top 1%, I mean compared to all other people writing today.
Yeah.
People who want to write professionally. And I always liken it to being a professional athlete. I would love to be point guard for the Lakers. I'm never going to do that because I don't have that skill level. And what used to always drive me crazy, Chris, you and I, when we would do the story summits with Derek, would on Saturday evening would have a panel, and Sid would be there, and Linda, and Michael Haig, and Chris and I would be up there, would be answering questions. All of the questions were, how do I get an agent, right? And how do I sell my script? And my response was always, look, for 99% of the writers, when they finally meet a connection who can actually help you, they do not have the story skills to be able to make it pay off. That is a fact. And so my question is, and why I think your point was so important about the technique is, and why I think we're together, is because we're trying to take this to another level of professional techniques that you can use to actually translate theory into practice that can actually be a script that gives you a shot. Nobody can guarantee it, but gives you a shot to sell. And I just think that this whole idea of how do you translate theory into practice through technique is the question.
I would like to answer that, but I think Dara said first.
Okay.
I will defer to Dara.
Okay. Actually, I was going to comment on something you said.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, but in a good way.
Okay.
Well, please say what you're going to say so I can comment on what you said.
Okay. Well, I think we're all talking about some very interesting aspects of storytelling, and it's sounding a little bit like they're mutually exclusive, and I think it's the kind of the opposite. It's inclusive. That you mentioned how important it is for writers to actually examine their work and to see what is the story I'm telling and why do I need to tell this story. And then you were talking about how important it is to actually have an imagination where you are creating unique and interesting plots and so on. And it's kind of like the two have to go together. And this is a big part that's missing right now in how writers are being trained. And even at the highest levels, we're seeing so many movies made by some of the top filmmakers that are kind of like, 3 hours of I can't put together what the story is even
They're missing
about.
the mark.
They're missing their own mark.
Why are they missing the mark, though?
Well, okay. I really think one of the biggest problems we have in our specific industry, it's one of the few artistic industries that I can think of in the entire world that doesn't honor technique and honor the ability to learn your craft. It's almost looked down upon that if I'm a great writer, it should just spill out of the top of me. And you know what? Sometimes a good story will just appear. But it doesn't mean you can duplicate your own success if you don't have a technique to pull it out of you again. I was at a dance recital the other night, and I was just in awe of the level of skill that these dancers could bring to so much dance. And then I said to myself, it's because they know every step. It isn't because one big thing they brought up. They knew and they understood every step. And this is what we don't have right now. We don't have a respect for how to develop a technique that really supports your art. You know, I really believe that every single person that is aiming towards being a writer is doing so because they've had moments of glory. They wrote something that their parents, the teachers, friends, they got it published. Something happened that said, I could do this, okay? And so, but the problem is, how do they do this on an ongoing basis? And one of the reasons I think you can bring so many different teachers together who we really teach we have different approaches. And for me, and I suspect the rest of you feel the same. I don't want anybody to become a Dara Mark screenwriter, you know, but I can give you information. And if it lands for you, that means that I am helping to make conscious something you've been doing unconsciously. And now it becomes a tool. And now you can use it over and over again. And you can duplicate your own success. And you can create greater and better stories because you can manage your technique. You don't spend your entire creative life waiting for the muse. Yeah. You are the muse, you know, it lies within you. And so this is why I think technique is so important and why I'm so excited about you bringing so many people together at this high a level to teach the craft so that everyone in the audience can fill their toolbox, no matter who they're listening to. Somebody is going to go, oh, of course. Right. Yeah. And I'm sure we've all had the experience too, where you're teaching and suddenly there's a student who's been paying a lot of attention and then you suddenly lose them because they're writing away. And I think it's wonderful. It means I touched that for them and they just dove in deeper.
So I'm going to jump in and be very audacious, and I'm going to have an answer for what John was asking. Like, how do you train people to do this, and why are people missing the mark? And I have to say, everyone at this table is smarter than me, so I have to say that where this comes from is I think I have a unique...
Thank you. I wondered when you were going to notice.
I noticed from the very beginning. But I have a unique path to have gotten here. I started out as a studio reader, reading scripts, evaluating scripts. And then I wanted to be a writer, and I studied all of the theory and all of the books, and I just felt lost like most people do. And I was really lucky to have some really smart Academy Award-winning producers take me under their wing and really help me. I was a professional screenwriter for 11 years, worked for all the studios. And for the last 7 years now, I train writers and I work with showrunners. So I have a unique perspective. Doesn't mean it's the right perspective, but this is my audacious answer. Most writers fall into one of two categories. They tend to be conceptual or intuitive. Conceptual writers tend to work very outside in. So they really, you ask them, where'd you start? And they start with a concept or world building or some plot, you know, a twist ending, or and they're very focused on what other people are going to find interesting. Then there are intuitive writers, and intuitive writers are the opposite. They write from an authentic place, they write what is real to them, and they write what the characters would actually do. Conceptual writers, if they're trained and they're smart, they can come up with great concepts. They can have great story beats, but they always fall short with character, dialogue, and emotional resonance, and they know that. And they don't know what to do about it, and the books don't help. The thing is, you cannot drink a milkshake with a hammer, and you can't pound nails with a drinking straw. You got to use the right tool. So the conceptual brain is the worst part to be doing characters, dialogue, and emotional resonance. Intuitive writers, they don't create characters, they don't invent characters, they discover characters, and they're like real people to them. So intuitive writers never get lonely when they write because they're hanging out with like their friends. Here's the key. Everyone, when we write, we want to create the best possible script. So what we do, knowingly or unknowingly, is we play to our strengths and we hide our weaknesses. So there's this adage that the more you write, the better you'll get. total nonsense. It's like Santa Claus. The more you write, the higher the pile of similarly flawed scripts. So what I do with creative integration, which I'll be doing, talking about over the weekend, is when agents or managers send me writers who are great with concept and story, we tie their hand behind their back and we make them work intuitively. And with intuitive writers, we make them work conceptually, because intuitive writers have great characters, great emotion, always in search of a story they can never find. So what creative integration is what's your strength and what's your weakness? We're going to take your strength, tie it behind your back. We're going to make you for 6 months work from your weak spot. And this isn't going to your agent. This isn't going to the studio. This is called writer development. Now, once you can get your weak side as strong as your strong side, then comes the really hard part and the really fun part, which is integration. How do you take these two where they work together? That's how you create a pitch-perfect, authentic script, where when you're reading the script or watching a TV show or movie, it's like just hanging out with real people, doing what they really do. You never see the hand of the writer. You never see plot. You just see real characters that you care about, yet they're always doing interesting things, and it adds up to something. That's the needle in the haystack that everyone's looking for.
But can I ask you, is that the difference between amateur writers and professional writers? A professional writer, you have to acknowledge you have weaknesses.
Yeah,
like you have to be willing to kill your babies for
Have-
something else.
Wait,
it's not just
have you been to the movies lately?
But
Yes,
it's not
yes.
acknowledging.
Yeah.
That's the first step. The second step is you have to know how to relentlessly attack those weaknesses to turn them into strengths.
You got to get past your ego to do that.
Well, yeah, but you also have to know how to do it. In the last 7 years, we've had over 3,000 of our writers launch careers. It's not because I'm a better teacher. It's not because I'm a smarter teacher. It's because what we teach is different and it works. And I didn't come up with this all by myself. I had a lot of really smart people help me.
Yeah.
So creative integration, that is the key. And it's a process. It's not, techniques aren't going to save anybody.
Yeah.
Lists aren't going to save, genre rules, I don't think. I think it comes down to writing process. And when someone understands how to evolve their process, then they will create a lifetime of better product.
I've got a different take, but it's not contradictory to what you said.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's just I started as a writer in Hollywood. I sold and optioned a number of scripts. Roll forward a little bit, I started teaching, and I started teaching about 1,500 different techniques, 100% of which are addressed to the subconscious or unconscious. None of these are consciously observed by an audience when they go see a film or a TV show. You don't come out of Iron Man 3 talking about the almost opposite traits he has. He's got like 5 different personality traits, and they're not quite opposites, but he's arrogant, but he cares about saving people. He's a nerd, but he's a warrior. I mean, these are what I call skewed opposites or almost opposites, but people don't come out of the film going, well, look at that. That's happening on a subconscious basis, that people go, well, that's an interesting character. So somehow roll the clock forward. I became an executive.
Wait, can I go back real quick? So when you're writing, the writer thinking that?
I'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay.
But just to kind of give some context to the people watching this, somehow I became an executive vice president at Fox, then Disney, and did a lot of writer training and training of content executives with these techniques. And a writer should not feel bad. You say, well, create an interesting character. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think it's easy to create a fascinating character. And if you're having a TV show and you have a cluster of 6 characters, I don't think it's that easy to create 6 fascinating characters. I break down characters into 6 layers. Every character is a sandwich. There are techniques addressed to the subconscious that make characters interesting. You can learn them. You can create a fascinating character every time. I'm not talking about writing from the outside. I'm not talking about writing from the inside. I'll let the writer figure that out, or I'll let you teach them how to do that. Because that's not my focus. It's just a different focus. There are techniques to make us care about a character. I know 89 ways to make us identify with a character. Flip any of them upside down, and we don't like the character. Loyal to a friend betrays a friend. So maybe the character has 6 of these empathy techniques and 1 technique that makes them unlikable. They're a flawed hero or a cool villain if you do the other way around. There are techniques to give emotional depth to a character. Lots of them, like over 40 of them, that makes us feel that this character is not superficial. All of these techniques, 100%, are addressed to the subconscious. No audience member is aware of them, and most beginning writers are not aware of them. And even great writers stumble upon them, and then they forget There are writers who, have made 1 or 2 great screenplays and never done it again. They intuitively hit some of these techniques, and then they didn't know what they were doing because it was all intuitive. So my approach is simply, here are the techniques. Here's 89 ways to make us sympathize with the character. Here are 89 movie clips that show that they work. And now you know them. Here's your writing assignment. Create a scene, write a scene. This is what I was doing at Disney and Fox, and use at least 5 of those techniques.
Well, that's what I'm curious. What do you, each of you have a unique perspective. What do you think makes for a fulfilling character that you are empathetic with? That, I can watch Meryl Streep in a heartbreaking movie and I can, empathize with her, and but then I can see Bruce Willis kicking ass in Die Hard and I go, yeah, I want to be Bruce Willis. From your perspectives, what makes for a fulfilling character that you want to watch?
As I understand it, it's audience identification, that I can see something of me in that character. I can imagine myself in, maybe their behavior is extreme, but it overlaps with my possibilities. And if I don't see that, if I don't see some mirror of myself on the screen, reflecting back some part of me or possibility for me or danger for me, then I just check out. And I really, you can see it in the theater. If you stand in the back of the theater and you watch the film, the people are either leaning in like this, hypnotized, in a trance, in an altered state of consciousness, or they're pulled back like this. And they're thinking about what time is it, and the floor is sticky, and they go off the track.
But I've known you for a while. I love Barbie. What do I identify with Barbie that I go, yeah, I like this movie and it entertains me?
Well, in that case, it was more a matter of intelligence gathering for me as an audience member. I'm looking at the women sitting next to me and trying to get something out of what they're getting out of it, and also observing Ken and identifying pretty darn strongly with him. Yeah, that I've felt some of the things he's felt. So to me, that's where the movie came alive. Yeah. Because that's me in the movie.
And by the way, a lot of the rules disappear when you're doing a comedy. If you get an audience laughing, they will forgive anything. Yeah. They will go along for the ride. If they're laughing, things can make sense. They don't have to make sense. Yeah. You have them. Yeah. And Barbie had some pretty funny moments.
What do you think makes for a fulfilling character?
Well, again, we're all sort of talking around similar things, but for me, the way that I work with story, and this is what I've written about in my book, Inside Story, is that at the end of the day, there's only one story to tell, and that's the human story. It's the only story we know. And what we know consciously, what we know mostly unconsciously, but somewhat consciously, is that we move through life by responding to the conflicts and the challenges that we face. And that what the challenges present to us is the opportunity to grow. And so that when we are confronting any kind of a problem or a challenge, there's really only 2 outcomes. Either we grow through it, or the challenge will take us down. And that's the human story. And that's why I said earlier that it's so important for writers to recognize how noble this is, the work that we are doing, because that's human information. Okay, and that's how you create a strong character arc. So it doesn't matter, we can throw clever plots at any story, but we want to make sure that within that plot, within that conflict, there is something that is activating a writer to face that challenge. I mean, one of the things I always say is that what is your character, your protagonist, capable of doing by the end of the story that he or she wasn't capable of at the beginning? Because if the answer is not very much, then truly not very much has happened in that story. So, a brave fighter fights bravely. A cute and adorable couple find cute and adorable love. But what really pulls us in instead is, you were mentioning that you wanted to you wanted to watch a good romantic comedy. One of the problems with so many romantic comedies are that they are dealing with love, and they tell us nothing about the nature of love. It's how cute and adorable you are, or they can reverse it and make somebody a little bit troubled or whatever. But they're not really opening up the deep nature of love. So you look back at some of the classics, like When Harry Met Sally, for example. I mean, it's terrible that you kind of, in romantic comedy, have to go back that far to find some decent romantic comedy. But that story told us something about the nature of love, that lovers must be friends. They didn't try to write the book of love or anything, but embedded in that story.
Wasn't the advertising campaign the opposite of that? That people are that a man and that was the advertising campaign.
Well,
that a man and woman can't be friends if they're good looking.
Yeah, but
there's often not a match between the advertising and the reality.
But the nature of that story and its longevity, really has to do with something very simple was happening in that story. And so we often, what I encounter constantly with writers who are submitting a draft to me is that, I like what you were saying about integration, that we write to our strengths, and we need to rewrite to our weaknesses. We need to learn how to master that. And, most inspiration comes in the form of a plot. Would it be interesting if, so a plot unfurls itself. And, I always say that, you enter a story anyway, the story invites you in. And then there's the need to stand back and investigate that story. What is that story saying to me and through me? And that's not an answer. Okay, that is a process. That is to me, the nature of creativity itself. And I define creativity as the act of creation, of making new life, so that it's something is being born here. And it's not a question of writing a thesis about something that is brilliantly philosophical. It's about, if you are attacked by the need to create, that something in that is calling you. So you're not writing what you know, you're writing what you are being called to know. And that's why the function and purpose of all the art that we make is to be in that space, in that investigation. And, you're right. I think that we're in a cutthroat business, that it doesn't, always represent that the best get rewarded for anything. But you will be rewarded if something is presented to you in a creative way and you follow that creation. I mean, we don't know where anything is taking us in life.
Thank you for watching part 1 of Story Expo's Masters of Story Roundtable discussion. For information and to register for the upcoming Masters of Story conference in Los Angeles the weekend of September 27th, 28th and 29th, featuring live masterclasses with John Truby, Chris Vogler, David Freeman, Dara Marks and Corey Mandell, please visit storyexpo.com. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to become the best writer you can be and to network with hundreds of other fellow writers from around the world. We'll see you there.